So that shirt, you own that
Colonel
airplane?
Bud Anderson. What an iconic
It's a
American.
double barred question.
He is a retired officer from the Air Force, and he is the last living ace of World War II in our country. And you're going to get to go on a ride of your lifetime because you'll be captured into one of his most famous aerial combat missions. During the war, he was the highest scoring ace in his P-51 Mustang called Old Crow. Toward the end of Colonel Anderson's 2 combat tours in Europe in 1944, he was promoted to a major at the age of 22 years old. I don't know what your 22-year-old was doing, but I know what mine was, and it was not in combat. That's a really young age, even in wartime. After the war, Colonel Anderson became a well-regarded fighter test pilot and a fighter squadron and wing commander. He served his wing commander tour in combat in Vietnam. He retired as a full colonel in 1972. After that, he worked in flight test management for McDonnell Douglas. His 1990 autobiography, which is the book that is for sale here, and he'll be happy to autograph to you personally afterwards. It's called To Fly and Fight, Memoirs of a Triple Ace. It was recently republished, by the way, with new photos and additional information that he's been hiding all these years. Right? In 2008, Bud was inducted into the National Aviation Hall of Fame. So I'm going to turn this over to him now, and hold on to your seats because you're going to be in for a ride.
Thank you. Everybody hear me back there? Good. What I'd like to do today is tell you a little bit about how things were in this country during World War II, before and after, and also overseas. And I think you raise flies around here, don't you? Raise flies around here.
Idaho know this time of year, right? They're fighting to get in. It means a cold winter.
How it was in the United States, and give you a feel for that. Then also how Bud Anderson got into the war, and a little bit about that. And I have a really neat video for you to see. That will give you a feel for what it was like to be in aerial combat, 1 versus 1. Killer be killed in the skies of over Germany in 1945, and how we broke the back of the Luftwaffe. First of all, you're looking at a picture up there, and it has that big smile. And everybody wants to know, what's the big smile all about? Well, it was taken, I think, 2 days after I finished was sobered up. So it was 2 days after my last combat mission, and I knew I was going home. And I had finished 116 missions.
Wow.
480 hours of combat. Our tours were about hours of mission. And I shot down 16 and a quarter enemy airplanes in aerial combat, all German fighters, except the Ford, that was an old obsolete bomber that I shared with my old flight. Everybody wants to know how you get a quarter of a kill. Did you shoot a little bit of a wingtip off or something? But you share it with 3 other guys. So War II was a big deal. We had these dictators around the world, in the Orient, in Northern Europe, who decided they were going to conquer that part of the world and enslave the people. Put them into slave labor. Hitler and Mussolini and the Japanese in the Orient, they were going to conquer their part of the world and enslave those people. It was a war that had to be fought, and I think our country was in a depression, and we had Republicans and Democrats in those days too, and they argued about it. We had the pacifists that said, hey, we got an ocean over here, an ocean over here. Let them have their war and leave us alone. And then there were the people that said, you know, we're going to get involved in this sooner or later, and better sooner than later. So that was a controversy. And when the Japanese attacked us at Pearl Harbor in 1941, had to stop the argument. It was amazing how our country absolutely galvanized. The Republicans and Democrats spoke with one voice in foreign policy. Can you imagine that happening today?
No.
I don't think so. And after the attack, I don't know, they call it the greatest generation, but I just think it was that people realized that, hey, we have to fight this war. Let's get together and get it over with. And all our young men rushed to the recruiting stations and joined the whole entire graduating class of high school kids. Would go together. It was amazing. And some of our young men even went to Canada before the war, before our war started, to learn how to fly and then go over and help the Royal Air Force, as opposed to Vietnam, when some of our young men went to Canada to avoid service. Patriotism was an absolute high. Have we got any World War II veterans in the audience? We got one back there, he and I are the only two guys that are going to know what I'm really talking about. The reason that they call it the greatest generation is because everybody got involved. If you weren't in the service, you were either unfit for military service, but you were working in defense industry, building. We nationalized the industry, and everybody was making war-making material. So we were involved, and almost every family had somebody in the service. And so they watched the news of what was going on. It was total war. And no compromise. And I don't know how to say it, how patriotic people were. They flew the flags at home, and if you have somebody in the service, you could put a star in the window, and if you had somebody that was killed, you put I forget what it was, a gold star, and 'Blue Stars. And we'll never see anything like this again. We saw a little bit of it during Desert Storm 1 and 2 and 9/11, but it didn't last. It was a show at least. And so there is a glimmer of hope, I think, in this country, but sometimes I wonder which way we're going. How did Bud Anderson get involved? I always wanted to fly as a youngster. We lived under an airway and old airplanes used to go by, and I'd run out in the street. And I grew up on a farm. The street, I guess, would be a dirt road, really, and trying to identify what the airplane was, and keep a little logbook on it, everything. I just and so there's no way I could fly if folks didn't have any money, lived on the farm. And so I looked up the peacetime requirements to join one of the services. I found out you had to be 20 years old, had to have 2 years of college, physically fit, and unmarried. So I found a junior college in Sacramento, and I went there, and it was a technical course. It taught me how to be an aircraft mechanic. And so when I was in my second year of college, a great thing happened to me. There was a government subsidized program that taught young men how to fly with no commitments afterwards. You didn't have to go into service or anything. They were trying to get young men interested in flying, hoping that you would join. And so for the price of $9.50 for an insurance policy for my parents, I was able to get a private pilot's license at age 19 while I was going to school. And it was a very structured thing. You got 35 hours and you either passed or failed. And you know what, today it's still the minimum requirement is 35 hours. But the average time for a private pilot now is about 70 hours. There's so much more regulations and things like that than there was when I was flying. And you know, when you're a kid, you think of flying as speed. You know, that's all I could think of. And this early model of the Piper Cub had an advertised horsepower of 45 horsepower. And I can remember going, instructor says, you go out there and get on that causeway, fly to Davis, and get somebody to sign your logbook and fly on that causeway back, and don't get lost. You know, it was a very structured thing. And so we go over there and find this causeway. I knew where it was. And I'm looking down, and some of these cars are staying with me, and some of them were passing me. But it was flying, and I don't remember any big compliments about my flying ability, but I know that it helped me in the future. It really, really did. And that summer we graduate, and the Sacramento Air Depot, which was building up, they could see the war coming. And they were hiring anybody that said they could turn a wrench, I think. They hired our whole class, actually, before we graduated. nights they put us on a graveyard shift from midnight to dawn. And I had just gotten off of the graveyard shift, and I'd been on days for a short time. And everybody, World War II guys, know where they were on December 7th, 1941. And I can remember we were working 24/7, and it was Sunday, and the foreman came around, I don't know what time of day it was, a little later on, and says, hey, you, but then go home and come back at midnight. The Japanese just attacked us at Pearl Harbor. My God, I didn't even know where Pearl Harbor was. And, but now I knew, hey, this is serious business. And so if I'm going to go in to the service, it's going to be wartime. So I was still 19 however. And the next month, January 13th, by the way, I was born on Friday the 13th, 1922. I'm not very superstitious. Anyway, I went right there to the recruiting station on Sacramento Air Depot on my birthday. And a few days later, I raised my right hand and I'm gone. So now, doing the service and see the world, right? As a kid, I don't think I also flying. So I guess I got into Nevada once. So I didn't get anywhere. So I'm really looking forward. I'll probably go to Texas or Florida or somewhere for my primary training. Where do you think I went?
California.
San Diego, California. About 400 miles from home. Maybe a little farther. And it was not even a military facility. It was the Ryan School of Aeronautics. And what was happening, the Army Air Corps was trying to build up from a few thousand pilots to 225,000 pilots in the fastest time possible. And don't let safety get in the way of progress. We were having these flying schools. Anybody that said they could teach was training pilots for the military. And it's a sad statistic that we killed more pilots in training than we did in the entire war. Really sad. But anyway, so I go down there and we lived in a motel and marched on down the field and flew in these little Ryan airplanes, P-52s. We call them Maytag Messerschmitts. They had a seven, don't hold me to it, 7-cylinder radio engine, and they used to put. And we kind of, that's what we called it anyway. So we trained there for about 3 months. And again, the flying seemed to come easy. You know, I knew how to fly. I had a private pilot's license. And so I think it really, really did help me in the military flying. And I enjoyed it. And it seemed to come easy. So 2 or 3 months there training, and I go on to the next phase, basic training. And then where do you think I went? You know, Florida maybe. I went to Bakersfield. About 400 miles closer to home. And at least it was a military facility, and we had military flight instructors, and we flew the Consolidated Multi PT-13, and it at least had it wasn't an open. The Ryan had it was an open cockpit and no radio, and at least the BT-13s now had a radio and a canopy, and you could learn how to fly instruments in the back and put the hood over, and a little more powerful, had a two-position prop. And we did started formation flying and night flying, acrobatics, stuff like that, a little more advanced. And surely now, after 3 months, surely I'm going to go somewhere out of California. Well, I did. I got over into Nevada. No, I mean Arizona. I'm sorry. To Luke Field, which is still an active Air Force base today. And there we flew the North American AT-6. And now, man, that was flying. That's what I thought flying was all about. Very powerful engine. Still had a nice canopy like the BT-13. But the airplane was faster, and it was a great trainer. It was a tricycle, a tail-wheel airplane, and you had to pay attention landing a T-6. So in those days, we needed pilots in every category: transport pilots, instructors, fighter pilots. So if you could convince your instructor you'd make a good fighter pilot, your chance of getting that assignment were pretty good in those days. So I always wanted to be a fighter pilot, and I'm not sure where that came from. Again, Battle of Britain, newsreels. But on the other hand, I thought, if I was in that airplane by myself, single cockpit, I would be the pilot, the navigator, the gunner, the radio man, you name it. I would be it. I'd be responsible for my life. If I had a 10-man crew, I'd have to depend on teamwork and things like that. And I wouldn't have total control. And I thought the fighters looked a little cooler than the bombers too. So, sure enough, I get a fighter assignment. And you will believe where I went, won't you?
No.
California. Went to San Francisco Bay Area, Hamilton Field, to a fighter pilot replacement training group. And what you did, you went there and essentially learned how to be a fighter pilot. You got checked out in a P-39 and flew there for about 3 months. And then you would go to a real fighter group somewhere in the world and fly your combat. So we had these old Beta. Oh, by the way, I was assigned to Hamilton Field, but with duty at the Oakland Municipal Airport. Again, not a military facility. We took over the terminal and a couple of hangars and flew out of Bolton. All of our people were military, but we certainly weren't on a military base. A little bit about P-39. I don't have a picture of it, but it was a beautiful looking airplane. And there's a saying, if an airplane looks good, it flies good. It's not necessarily true. The airplane had the P-51 had the engine mounted behind the pilot, mid location in the airplane. That gave it an FCG, and how many pilots we got out there? We all know that an FCG makes your airplane a little more unstable. And there are people that said the P-39 would tumble with the lasso or tea kettle. I never tumbled one, but I saw some guys rat racing over the field one time, and I saw this guy fall out of it. I'm pretty sure he felt that he had tumbled, but I kind of liked the airplane. It was very compact. You know, you sat in there. It had automobile-type doors, and had windows in. You could roll them up just like a car, taxi out, take off, and go out the window if you wanted to. And putting the engine in the back opened up the whole nose for an armament system. And you had a cannon in there with quite a bit of ammo. And then we also had machine guns in the wing and then on top of the fuselage. So there we did, in Oakland, we did gunnery, got used to that. And I was, as a kid, I used to shoot quail with, shotguns, and I knew how to lead and things like that. So in those days, we had a fixed sight, and just like a shotgun in a sense, or more like a rifle. And so the gunnery came pretty easy for me. We got more formation flying, things like that. Then when my time comes to go to fighter group, I said, no, you're not going to do that. You're going to go to Tonopah, Nevada, and join a brand new fighter group, the 357 fighter group, is being activated for World War II. And that means I'm going to be one of the very first, the first people to be assigned to it. What did that mean? It means, as a minimum, I'm going to be a flight leader, and I'm going to be responsible to get people involved in combat. I'll be out in front. And also the bid for promotion. I didn't know about those things, or I didn't worry about those in those days. I just wanted to fly. And so we went to Nevada, and then our crew chiefs started to come. We were still flying P-39s. And our first pilots came. And the really important thing about being assigned to that group, we're going to train as a group, and we're going to go fight the war together. We'll go overseas as a fighter group. And that's really good because when you're flying, you recognize the guys' voices, you know who they are immediately, and you have a camaraderie of your own outfit. It was a real blessing. So, so we start moving again. Where did we go? He gets back to California, to Santa Rosa, and we stayed there for a little while, and then we moved to Oroville, California, which is about 2 hours from the farm. And I could take a 4-ship and take off, and I could be over the farm in about 10, 15 minutes, go visit the folks, and keep a little informal air show. Now, we don't do those kind of things anymore. But World War II, you did. If you didn't come by, they thought, what's the matter? They angry at us or something. So, and finally we moved to, I think it was Lander, Wyoming. And, it was in Wyoming, I forget the exact city. We got our final training there, and we all got on troop train one night, and one day, and headed for New York. And we often wondered, where the heck are we going to go? You know, flying P-39s. Where were they? They were in North Africa and down in the South Pacific. So that's where we thought we'd probably go. But when we got to New York, it was supposed to be classified, but you know, the word gets out. We're going to go to England, and somewhere in there we found out that we're going to get the brand new P-51 Bravo. I could see that. You know, and we had not even seen a P-51, let alone found one. But we'd heard a lot about it, and we were kind of delighted. And so we got on one of the biggest ocean liners in the world. There was two of them, the Queen Mary and the Queen Elizabeth. And they were, the whole time, for the whole war, they went back and forth. And I don't think, they never got damaged. They had to be a prime target, and we had not won the Battle of the Atlantic. They were sinking our cargo ships like crazy. And we had some concern about that. You know, we're going to go across the ocean to England. And I'm thinking there must be German submarines just waiting for us to come out of that harbor. And so we go out broad daylight, blowing their horn and squirting water across and everything. I thought, geez, why don't we go out at midnight? And I guess they were so fast that the submarines, they would have been in a very perfect position. But there was 15,000 troops on board, and our GIs had to, our enlisted personnel had to go 24 hours in the hold and 24 hours on the open deck as we crossed the Atlantic. Now, I was the captain, so I got a honeymoon suite on the fourth deck. With 7 other guys. He had bunk beds stacked up. And it was amazing. That airplane was full of people, just incredible. And we got into Scotland, and we offloaded on the lower deck. They had these cargo doors. When we got away from there, and then you could see how big they were. They were really huge boats. So we get there, it's dark, blacked out. Everything was blacked out at night. The war was on. And they're still bombing England. And we went down to our base in East Anglia. And we were assigned to the 9th Air Force. We were the 2nd unit to be equipped with the Mustang. And that Mustang was slated to go into the ground support of the invasion, which was supposed to be coming up. And now I'll talk a little bit about war and tactics. The 8th Air Force was charged with the responsibility to destroy the Luftwaffe, so the invasion of Europe would go on. If we didn't, it would have been too costly to send all our men down to Normandy and across. So, what happened? This is the first chance for the Army Air Corps to prove this concept of strategic warfare, where the bombers will always get through. And we call it the flying fortress, when the B-17 could fight its way in and fight its way out, and go in there and they could destroy the war-making capability of Germany, and the troops could just walk in. Well, nobody told the Luftwaffe about this. They took a tremendous toll on bombers in 1942, 1943. They thought they could do all this stuff without fighter escort, and they wanted to go in the daylight, big formations, so they could use the northern bomb site and bomb accurately at military targets. The British said, no, you can't do it that way. You're going to take too many losses, and you got to go in there and do night bombing, where you just bomb in the area, fly over the city and drop the bombs. And well, we're Americans, so we're going to do it our way. And in 1943, we actually had a halt in the bombing. Said, hey, we've just taken too many losses. And so they said, we need fighter escort now. Well, we had P-47s and P-38s in the theater, but they didn't have the range to go where the bombers wanted to go. So somebody said, we got these P-51s over here, the 354th, the Pioneer Regiment, that didn't have anything to do, so to speak, except get ready for the invasion. And why don't we try them? We understand they had quite a bit of long range and endurance, so they tried them, and they're so wildly successful that the 8th Air Force demanded that they get the P-51s. So who's the next unit to be equipped? Our unit, the 357. So we were transferred to the 8th Air Force, and we're the first one in the 8th Air Force. The Pioneer Group was doing such a great job, the 9th Air Force didn't want to lose them, and so they only loaned them to the 8th Air Force. And so when the invasion came, they started ground support. So now the defeating the Luftwaffe was not going so well. I can remember reading an intelligence report, January of 44, and reading it again in 1945, and we actually had more, that Germans had more airplanes available in 45 than they did in 44. So the bombing of the factories and the bombing of the airfields was not doing the job. And the bomber pilots told us how they wanted to be escorted. They said, okay, we got these long screen of bombers, maybe 1,000 bombers. And oh man, when they were pulling contrails, it was a sight to see. And then you had another 800-900 fighters weaving around in the air. It was pretty impressive. And being in the air, the bombers seemed to go forever, as far as you could see. And okay, you fighter pilots, what we want you to do is stay with us. We want you to fly with us. We want you over, under, over here. It was kind of a feel-good thing. They said, when the enemy comes in, you drive them away and then come back and escort. They actually had an altitude limit. And you went down chasing them. If you hadn't shot them down by 18,000 feet, break it off, go back up, escort. As it turned out, it was not the best way in the world to do it, but that's the way we did it. And in early '44, the invasion was scheduled for June, and they said, Cap Arnold says, you've got to destroy the Luftwaffe before June. And you guys aren't doing it. So we had a change of command. And the generals were removed, and General Jimmy Doolittle, my hero, took over the 8th Air Force. I don't have to introduce General Doolittle to this group, I don't think. But he had a different background, you know, he had fighter time and had a different concept on how to fight the war. And he had a little bit more flexibility when we're getting bomber crews very rapidly and building up. And his orders from the Chief of Staff of the Air Corps was to destroy the Luftwaffe. So he came over, I didn't know about this during the war, I read his book. And he came down for his first visit to the 8th Fighter Command. And he goes through this door, and there's a big sign over the door that says, mission of the 8th Fighter Command is to bring the bombers home safely, something like that. And he says, who put that up there? And General Kepner says, I don't know, it was here when I got here. He said, we'll tear it down. The mission of the 8th Fighter Command is to destroy the Luftwaffe. And he says, from now on, when you fighter pilots engage the enemy, the policy is pursue and destroy. And he took the altitude limit away, and you never saw such a happy, eager bunch of fighter pilots. They just took our arm from behind our back and turned us loose, and we were so happy. The bomber pilots were not very happy. They actually considered Doolittle a murderer. And they wanted their fighters, but he had it right. I don't know whether he had more information about the German fighter pilots, but here's how we destroyed the Luftwaffe. We killed their experienced pilots in aerial combat to a point where they really couldn't put up a big defensive force. And so they allowed, the invasion went on schedule, June 6, 1944. And General Eisenhower was confident enough to tell the troops, if you see an enemy, if you see an airplane in the air, it's ours. And I flew on D-Day, the longest mission I ever flew, by the way, 6 hours and 55 minutes. And that gives you a feeling of how good that Mustang was. You could actually fly about 8 hours. Help me go to Berlin, back, twice. It was just a perfect airplane for the conditions that were in Europe. And I think the two significant things about the war in Europe was the arrival of the Mustang at the right time and General Doolittle's decision to turn the fighter pilots loose. I think those were significant things in the war in Europe. While the invasion and then the eventual downfall of Germany. So, what do we got there? I think that's a good day in England. Yeah, that's a good day in England. I was always a factor of what we did over there. Pretty pictures there, contrails. Again, think about 1,000 bombers and 1,000 fighters and what that must have looked like. And I can remember giving this talk at the Castle, old Castle Air Museum in mid-California. And when I was through, a gray-haired lady came up to the front and she says, a thick German accent, she said, "We weren't worried about those white things up there. We were worried about all the stuff we were shooting up at you. It had to come back down on us." And I never thought about that, having flak and bursts, and the pieces are flying through the air. What goes up has to come down. And, I have the most respect for the bomber pilots. To get the accurate bombing, they had to fly straight and level for so many minutes to make the northern bomb site work. And they'd get shot at, and it would be like a black cloud by the time they got through. And then here comes another group, had to go right through that black cloud and drop their bombs on the same target. And we didn't go through that black cloud. We went around and we met them on the other side. But, man, that had to take a lot of guts to do what they did. And now we've defeated the Luftwaffe and we're having less bomb losses, so they changed the emissions from 25 to 35, and now they can go to the places that they wanted to go, the long-range ones, and start doing their strategic bombing. And it took everything we had over there, all the services involved to win that war. I don't know whether another picture. Okay, these are the 4 top guns of the 357 fighter group. And our groups claim to fame or that we shot down over 600 enemy airplanes in a very short time, 14 months. And we have these heritage groups over there, the 1st and the 56 P-47s. And they've been over there for 2 years. And we're at 600 kills too. We were number 3. We did it in a short time. We have 42 aces, more than any other fighter group. And so there's Peterson, Carson, Johnny England Air Force Base. That's the guy who was named after. And a young Bud Anderson over there on the far right. All between 15 kills and 18 kills. first of all, I gotta tell you a little story about it. I was home one Sunday and I got this call from some people down in Hollywood. They said, hey, we got this new idea about something really good. We've got a video guy, we got a writer, and the new thing about it was that it was the computer graphics guy. And their idea was that they were going to get a dogfight and then simulate it with the computer graphics and do a series of those. So they wanted to put this trailer together to go sell it somewhere. So I said, would I come down there and talk to them? And sure enough, I got down there and spent a couple of days. And they put something together real quick and let me see it. And I said, oh, this is terrible. I don't like anything about it. I want my name removed from it. They said, sorry, we already signed a waiver and we're going to go sell it. So they went off to places, and the History Channel was the one that was most interested in it. They said, hey, this is the best thing we've seen since sliced bread. And I found out, by the way, that I'm older than sliced bread. And my God, I can remember. Mom and Dad had this big thing on there, and they with a wire and sliced bread. And so when they went there, and the History Channel said, okay, we want to do a World War I, World War II, Korea, Vietnam, 2-hour show, and then we're going to do single dog fights after that. And when they got back home, the computer graphics guy knew I was pissed, knew I was upset. and so he said, I'm sorry. and said, I know you don't like some of this. Tell me what it is, and I'll get it fixed. I got money now. I can get things done. So I showed him all the things I didn't like, and they put it together. And what you're going to see is I'm 90% happy with it. And there's still things, you got to realize it's made in Hollywood. The most electrified dogfight of World War II, stuff like that. And so remember now, this is after Doolittle gave us okay to go chasing, pursuing this flag. So let's have what you got.
The Mustang and men like Bud Anderson saved the daylight bombing campaign.
Okay, I told you we were going to go for a ride, right? Is that incredible? So, because we're going to be starting the show back up again, Bud is going to be hanging out here all afternoon, and if you have questions, come up and talk to him, okay? And just enjoy him being here. If you have a book for him to sign, he'd be more than happy to do it. All these flies love him, so you can come over because they'll all stay on him. You should be okay. Okay, so let's thank Colonel Bud Anderson for being here. And we'll